normally would turn away. Using so with that, today we're going to go through my 3 principles, who will benefit from this, why we want to do this, and what the promise is of this entire webinar. So with that, here we go. We're going to dive into these in a moment, but so you know, my 3 principles are: avoid the Princess Diaries syndrome, what Facebook does right, and people love Chick-fil-A. And that, without you knowing any of that stuff, that sums up everything that we're going to talk about of how you can use technology to grow your agency. So with that, we'll go into this. Boom. So who will benefit? Any childcare or domestic staff placement agency that uses the internet as their primary way of managing their customers and caregivers who want to enjoy a simplified workload, reduce mundane repetitive tasks, cultivate a loyal following from caregivers and families, create a well-managed workflow, be able to place higher quality care faster, and has ambitions to do more with their agency, with their career. So why listen to us? Well, with that, we've seen it all collectively here. We're owners of agencies, trainer, that's what I do, caregivers, Enginehire, and I have caregiving experience, recruiters, we've seen it. We've then made it. Enginehire, immediately, that's what they do. They created a workflow CRM system to make it easier to manage caregivers, families, to manage all these things, make it simpler, take the mundane stuff out so you can focus on the bigger things. And at the same time, I have written my book on how to be a good nanny. I do it every day of teaching people what to do through courses and webinars and such like that. And then we did it. These are some of the agencies that we work with, some of the other businesses that we work with. And really, you're going to find this all useful, even if you don't exactly match the agency scenario. This webinar helps get the ball rolling on everything. So why? Well, when you succeed, we all succeed. My biggest goal in the industry is to uplift it. I've spent a lot of time working to get to where I am and figuring all of this stuff out. And that's kind of the sucky part of owning an agency or being a caregiver, is you're figuring it out from the ground up. Every family figures it out for themselves, and there's no real roadmaps to get there. But for this, we want to give you the roadmap that we use to make everything easier. So my core value is overwhelming support, not just support, but overwhelming support. So that means use the chat box. That means email me afterwards. That means all of, everything. If you have questions, we want to answer. We want to make sure that you're supported and getting what you want out of this webinar, out of our collective experiences. The promise. It's Friday. Imagine this. It's Friday and it's 5 minutes to the end of the work week. And while you're shutting down your computer, a big grin comes across your face because you know you will truly enjoy the weekend because you simplified your workload during the week. You're able to qualify more caregivers to place. You're able to take care of your caregivers, creating a community for them and a support system. You're able to enhance the nanny and agency experience, which is that. You spent time spending 75% of your time less spent on emails, and you took time to focus on growing your agency and what your agency's future could be. So in part with that, I just wanted to tell you that as I was creating this webinar, my fiance was loading the dishwasher, and I am all about efficiency. So I have this very effective way to load and unload a dishwasher, and it makes sure that there's no water on any of the things that you place in there once everything is supposedly done. So it's all dry. So that's important to me. And so as she's doing it in a different way. She's not doing it the way that I like to do it, the most efficient way that I've found. And and that is kind of why we're doing this, to make sure that you're doing everything the most efficiently way, taking all the things that really are a time suck out of your life. That's what I hate. So, principle number one, avoid the Princess Diaries syndrome. If you don't know what the Princess Diaries is, it's a movie starring Anne Hathaway, came out in 2001. What it's about is a frizzy-haired girl who seems like a average nobody girl, but it turns out she's really a princess for a faraway kingdom, and in this scenario, she's the only one that can save it. But that's really basically why you have your families as your clients, but you also have your caregivers as clients. And if you take care of your caregivers and you qualify them and you make them better and stronger, you can really make them into that person that you think is less than what they really are. Caregivers can be amazing, and there's a timeline where they can expand and grow and all of these things. But if you don't treat them like royalty, it's hard to use them later and make things better for them. So treat your caregivers like royalty, because it's really easy to exclude people from being in your talent pool. But once you get them in, you get to keep them forever. That's why when you go on a website and they're like, if you want this recipe, just give us your email and we'll email it to you. And now that company has your email and they can use it until you hit unsubscribe, because we probably would, but you have them there. And if they're getting valuable information, if they're giving you valuable information, you're going to stay hooked to them. So you can spend less time, you can develop less experienced nannies. Making many agencies drop those with little nanny experience, but lots of childcare experience. Sometimes it's the most enthusiastic people, but they don't have 8 years as being a caregiver. So it makes them really hard to place, or less than that. But like if someone has been a school teacher or done after school programs or worked with children a lot for many years, but they just haven't had that in-home experience, you can train them to become that. You can give them all that information, because you know, a lot of time being a nanny is actually just spent falling backwards into figuring out the right way to do it. Time doesn't necessarily equal skills. So once you have them in your talent pool, you place them over and over again. And we want to be able to share that it's important to give resources, because then you can make a higher quality caregiver for your clients. So in that, it's making things simpler. Low barrier to entry. Is it easier to get a first name, last name, and an email, or have these caregivers apply, putting everything up front, giving you their resume, cover letter, their references, making sure they fit your standards of what your agency is all about. They give you their driver's license. They have to give you a lot of things. But when you do that, that's a really high barrier to entry. And what you really want is you just want them initially. And then you can do all of that stuff later. But if you've excluded them at the beginning because you've had a high barrier to entry, you don't have them. And basically, with that, just way boiled down, if they become a good caregiver, if they are placed by a different agency, they find out they have a way and they become a nanny a different way. Now you don't have them because you created that high barrier and they never even applied with you. But as they progress, they might be an amazing caregiver now that you would love to place. It might be super easy to place them, but they're excluded from the beginning. So actually, like, this webinar is a great example. To do this webinar was your name and your email, and you were registered for this webinar. It wasn't prove to us that you're an agency. It was just name and email, and then you got this, and you got to decide from there how much more you want to commit. Did you want to commit time today to do this? So it's easier. So gradually releasing content and keeps that barrier low. And the low barrier to entry is by gradually dripping that content. So you're going to need all this information, But if you if you collect it over time, it's going to be easier to retain these people and to qualify them in a very purposeful and excellent high standards way. Let's go to the next one. So with that, with an automated and fragmented system, it doesn't have to be automated, but if you do automate it, which there's plenty of opportunities to do within your agency, you can spend less time doing those things. But a fragmented experience is great because it is encouraging and rewarding to the applicant. They apply, they get a gold star. They add their documents like they're supposed to, and they get that power up. And then they do the interview process with you, with the family, and now that's that ka-ching moment with them, not to make them sound like a product. But with that also is it's more manageable. A slower pace makes things easier to get done. You haven't done it all into a time crunch. It creates that momentum, giving that back and forth of you sending an email, you getting an email back, you send another email, you get one back. You feel like things are moving, and it keeps them engaged, which is what you want. It creates that low barrier to entry again, because you've started off small instead of everything at once. And it helps build trust with this applicant. And now I say that Mary says, because Mary has a lot of experience with this, and she would be great asset to explain to us just a little bit about why an automated and fragmented system, or how it's important to support your nannies throughout this process is important. So Mary, if you would.
Yeah, thank you. So giving those nannies more opportunity to explain themselves and give them more value, just like the training, support, and encouragement makes them a happy nanny, and they tell others. So like they're pretty much becoming your recruiters at the same time. So it also gives your agency just such a better look too. You don't want nannies going out and be like, they are difficult to work with. Don't waste your time. You want them to be like, they were amazing. I want to work for them. Happy nannies means a happy family that you place, means a happy, successful agency. So, yeah.
That was amazing. Truly couldn't have been said better. Happy nannies, that's what you want. So what Facebook does right. Facebook does a lot of things right, because people are on Facebook all the time. They're a huge company. Billions of people around the world use them all the time. And why are they successful? Because they're engaging, they're interactive, and they're relevant. And throughout this, as I talk about some things that you could do, I want you to think about how do you engage with your caregivers and make them feel supported. So engaging, that could be having a nanny of the month. Even putting that email out there, of emailing all of your nannies, being like, hey, this person's nanny of the month. It makes them feel like they could be nanny of the month. When I worked as a caregiver and I was part of an agency, just in their talent pool, I wasn't placed by them yet, and I saw that they had a nanny of the month. It could be my ego, but I really wanted to be nanny of the month. And when they eventually asked me to be nanny of the month, I was like elated. So you could do things like that. Easy, because you're not doing anything. You're just awarding someone something, and it makes them feel great. And it did. You could do weekly themes. You could talk about dinosaurs and how you can incorporate dinosaurs into the lunch that you're serving. You could do like a dino dig activity where you're in the sandbox. How you could draw dinosaurs. You can make them into crafts, make puppets. You can do all these things, and you can just tell them that. That doesn't mean that you're doing all of it, but you're giving them a resource, and that's great for a nanny that doesn't know how to make every week and every moment fun. Yeah, you could do things. In my head, I always envisioned this nanny party thing, and what I mean by that is events. You can hold an event as easy as holding this webinar, which is hosted through Zoom. So you could do a Zoom and just gather all your nannies and congratulate them for doing stuff, or you could talk about something that could be really important and make them a better caregiver. You can be interactive. So with that, there's things like Slack, Discord. You can check in, you can use forums. If you don't use Slack or Discord, they're both pretty similar. And a lot of workplaces use them because you can engage with your employees all the time. And in that same way, as an agency, you actually could engage with your caregivers all the time. And you can add things like forums to talk about things like, how do you deal in this situation? What's the best way about, stop avoiding a picky eater? How do you deal with, a tantrum? Like, what do you do? And you could have your caregivers engage in this, and it's in their pocket all the time because it's on their cell phone. You can check in with them, which I know a lot of agencies already do, but you can check in with them more regularly, having a thing like a Slack or a Discord, and with the stakes being much lower than that, hey, it's that 6-month call, how is everything going? And then you give them things that are relevant. So things like 5 ways, an article or a blog or a podcast, and activities, 5 ways to improve your nanny experience might be blah, 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 and blah. And that's really important to a nanny who's figuring out for themselves how to do it in this household. Especially, even the best nannies would love this support. When I say podcasts, blogs, and resources, you should, of course, make all of these things. Nobody has time for that. And what you could do instead is there's already a ton of resources out there. And if you curate that just a little bit, maybe things that you already subscribe to. So I subscribe to a lot of industry news. And if a parent blog has a new article out, I get an email, and I would just take that same link, I could put it in an email, and I could send it to all the caregivers in my network. And then you could do activities just the same. You don't have to create any of this content. You can just share it. And that is mind-blowing support to a caregiver who feels at the end of the day that their best friend is a 4-year-old because they spend all day with them. And that's like their life. It's their job, but being a caregiver is more than that for a lot of people. So we have the one and done / lifetime journey. So the one and done journey is really about you finding a caregiver, you placing that caregiver, and the exchange is done, versus finding that caregiver, placing that caregiver, and having them in your talent pool to reuse, to place again, to use for other things that you might want to grow your agency. So here's a little graph that we created. A caregiver applies, then you receive and you collect that information. You could have that as a high barrier entry with a lot of things, or it could be a little bit at a time. You collect that, send them the thank you. They upload documents, you'd have to do the reference checks, you schedule that interview together, and all the things in here in this top layer that are bolded are things that can be automated. There's of course more things throughout this that could be more automated, but at the bottom of this, everything that's in bold is something that could be automated and taken off your plate to create more efficiencies. And so the bottom part is they qualify for a job, they interview, and they're placed. And that's where the one and done journey would end. But if you keep these people around, you keep engaging them, you keep things relevant, you're giving them more opportunities to shine, you can place them again, of course, but other opportunities could come up as well. So you could reuse them often, place them time and time again. And you can also create new opportunities for your business in general. So when you decide that you might want to do event care or backup care, or you do that other thing where this caregiver that applied way long ago at the top of this didn't fit your criteria. Well, now you have different criteria. Now this person that has a ton of years teaching, but no years being a nanny, is still an amazing fit for doing event care, because they're not doing all of those things that is expected of a nanny. It's just an event care situation. Now that person is totally makes sense, and you can use them for that. And in this, we have Daniel says. So Daniel knows more about this than, more than I do about this, because I didn't create a system like Enginehire to do all of these things. So Daniel, if you could please explain to us a little bit about why this is important and how you could use automation and things like that. We would love to hear you.
Thank you, Danny. So yeah, like and Danielle, Danielle, I'm gonna answer a little bit your question and the one you just put in the chat through like what I'm gonna say here. And like it's really important. Maybe some of you are doing a seminar process of what we're showing here, but a nice exercise you can do besides like using a platform like Enginehire or other platforms that there are out there to automate things is that you have to think about like and map all the different steps that you take a nanny candidate through and start to see which kind of activities you think that you can automate and that don't add any value if you do them by yourself. So what I mean is like, for example, if we can see in this process, we see that there are like document collection, reference checks collection, schedule interviews, all those kind of things don't add any value if you do it by yourself. So you can have an automated platform that does it for yourself. In the case of the Danielle's question, yeah, of course you can do that. Like you can have like a list of different uh, reference and automatically you can send emails to them, at least for like to ask for I don't know, to schedule a time for you to call them or they can reply to your email. So that kind of things, like I think that that's a perfect example of things you can start to think about automating. And why I'm saying this, because what is important is that you have to try to think of focusing on what you're good at. Why I'm saying this? Because there, like, I think that there's one activity that can never be automated. It is like creating meaningful connections with your nannies and with your clients, with families. So if you start to think about things that you can automate, you can spend more time doing those kind of things that in the end, that can be the value that you have in your agency, like creating trust with your customers and with your nannies and not wasting time on productive things and things that could be done with a software. So I think that's the thing you have to start to think about. And I'm saying this based on the experience we have with working with a lot of different agencies that started to automate it and started to grow their business.
Perfect. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, with that, it's taking the things that don't add value to you. That's a significant way to think about this. What doesn't add value to your day that you can just have delegated elsewhere and automated? So with that, talk about the unqualified applicant. So this could be because your agency is online, right? So people apply, but this person applies from a totally different state than where you are, different city. This person makes no sense to place. You have no opportunity to place this person. This other person, they don't meet your standards of having this many years of schooling or this many years of already being a nanny or whatever like that. And then they have a different set of skills. So I keep mentioning like a teacher because that's a different set of skills, but still childcare. And so maybe you can't use that person either. But then you have the choice. You discard them, or do you keep them around? Can you keep them engaged? And now you've decided to grow your business. You've decided to add that backup care component, decide to expand to that city where that other person applied from, because you noticed a ton of people are applying from there and that it's a totally ripe market for that. You now offer tutoring. And so like that person that is a teacher or was a teacher, now they actually super qualify for that because tutoring is completely different in that venue. And then now my favorite one is actually that the applicant has grown. So from when they applied, you discounted them because of all of these things that they don't qualify for. Now a lot has happened in their life and they actually are a fantastic person to place now or to use in these other situations. But I like to think about when this person that was super eager, but they didn't have a lot of experience, now has a lot of experience as a nanny, and they're a perfect person to place with a family when you just couldn't do it before because it didn't make any sense. But now they are, because they're in your talent pool and you've kept track of them. So you get them, they're where you need them, and their qualifications fit. Then my third principle is people love Chick-fil-A. And I'm a great person to say that people love Chick-fil-A, because I personally, I don't understand it. Like, I had to figure it out why people love Chick-fil-A, because I don't like chicken sandwiches. So I was like, what is the big deal about chicken sandwiches? What's also more important than that is people love Chick-fil-A that you think shouldn't like Chick-fil-A. People just love it. Maybe it's the way that it sounds, but there's other reasons too. So what's so great about Chick-fil-A is it's a great product if you like chicken sandwiches. It's a fantastic service. It's predictable, and you trust them overall. So one Chick-fil-A to the next Chick-fil-A, it's the same service. You walk in, it looks the same. You have that same experience when they ask, the way that they ask you for your order. It's the same because they've trained them in what works the best. And then you love that you can go there every time and it's exactly the same. And so that's brings me to courses on this, because courses are one way to educate your caregivers on this. And so there's processes that are used in some industries and not in others. So in corporate America, or the corporate world, we don't just hire an employee and then expect them to do all the things that we agreed to when we hired them. We don't expect them to do it amazingly well. So we do things like onboarding, where you teach them, this is how it works. When you have to complete this document, this is actually the person it goes to specifically. This is how we want this done. If you write articles, you use a style guide of where to put the commas, because nobody knows where to put a comma. All of these things, you teach them what you want them to specifically know. And so with courses, you're able to do things like make more placements faster, make a higher quality placement because you've trained them. You can develop your talent pool, you can ensure a seamless transition, whether that's from one job type of childcare to now being a nanny, or just from coming into a family and what that transition is like. You're able to cultivate families and placements by using education as a means to develop these people. So, like I had mentioned way at the beginning, is education shortens the runway to success. So a lot of caregiving is done in a vacuum, and these caregivers figure it out for themselves. The families are also figuring it out for themselves. But if you have a highly trained caregiver, even somewhat trained caregiver on how these processes should work, they can guide the family. A caregiver has a lot of what is it called? Like when you they're important and they have a lot of value there. It's that type of thing that they're like the captain of the ship for the family. They can actually steer the family on like where to go. It's not their ship, but they can tell you like, this is the best way to get to that place. So that would be things on like, hey, they could bring up things that are really hard to bring up for families. Like, what do you do when this family has forgotten to pay you? Like, how do you have that conversation? That's a really hard conversation, because being a nanny and talking to the parents of a family, it's kind of like talking to the CEO when you just work in the mailroom. Like, it feels really, it feels crazy. The pressure is high and stressful in those situations. But if you educate your nanny on what to do in that situation, they can just handle it now. So what do you do in that situation? Well, your agency might be different, how you handle it, how Nanny ABCs tends to handle it and suggest those things. But the importance is instead of falling backwards into learning like, hey, I should have gone about it this way instead of the way I did go about it, we're just giving them the way that they should go about it in the first place. So now they don't have to follow their way backwards into learning these things. Again, that's the reason why people place experienced nannies, because you're assuming that they figured out how to do all these things, usually by doing it the wrong way. So a nanny that's done it for 8 years, you're like, they've definitely seen some stuff. They know the good ways to do things now. Where a nanny that's only done it for 1 year or a few years, they haven't seen everything yet. So they don't know all the crazy experiences that can happen. So you get to shorten that runway of feeling comfortable in this home, but also being a great caregiver. It doesn't have to take time. So why courses are amazing, if you want to go that route. And courses don't have to be what you think of them. It doesn't have to be you do this to get to the next course and you have to finish that and you take a test. It doesn't have to be that. Courses can be a much different experience than that, but shortens the runway to success. It's time now. Time equals ability, as I said in the past, of you're a caregiver for a super long amount of years. You've probably seen some stuff, you know how to take care of business, but that also doesn't mean that you have had all those great moments where they know how to proceed in these things. It just means that they've been a caregiver for that amount of time, and that you can make a better, faster, stronger candidate easier. You can take these people with less experience and you can give them all the experience up front. So there's that Caregiver Canyon, which is the care catch-22 of having been a caregiver for a long time to get placed with a family. Sometimes you have this highly enthusiastic person that really wants to be a caregiver, like my situation when I became a caregiver for a family. When I became a nanny for a family, I was super enthusiastic about it. And there was a lot of hurdles to get through to do that. But I had to prove up front how willing I was to learn everything to make sure that I'm doing a great job when I wasn't a caregiver. And you know, with that, there's very little resources on how to be a great caregiver. When I first started, the week before I started, I realized I didn't know how to go to the bathroom when I'm watching these kids. And every other childcare situation I had ever been in, there was always someone to provide some sort of coverage in those moments. So I had to figure that out. I looked through, I went all over the internet trying to find something out. I went to bookstores to find it out. No, there was nothing there. So giving the information up front of how to proceed in these things, it can be crazy valuable. And then you can start rating people by knowledge versus experience. So their actual knowledge that they have on these things makes them a more qualified caregiver. You can give them a supported community, a seamless transition. You have that loyalty, and you can have repeat placements. So where would you start with this? I would start with all of the questions that you get asked all the time by your nannies. I'm sure you have them, of a nanny calling up and saying, hey, what do I do in this situation? And you have to tell them, this is what you do. And then you get that from a parent, but you've cultivated, you already have a lot of questions to give answers straight to. So what are the suggestions that you say all the time of how you want this caregiver to proceed, or how you think that they should? You can just answer those right away. It could be through a pamphlet. It could be a video. It could be a document. It could be the same sort of email you send every time. It's just giving them information up front is what I mean when I say courses. You could do it live, like this webinar. You do it live, you invite an expert, so you don't even have to provide the content. You're asking someone that's already an expert to do it. And experts are really easy to find. Facebook and Instagram. I have a podcast about caregiving, specifically created for agencies, on how to do all this stuff better, just like this webinar. And reaching out to people with LinkedIn and everything is super easy. And it's really easy to get someone to come in front of a group of caregivers to speak about what it is that they do. And then you also get the plus of having that FaceTime in, of creating that bond, creating more trust. And you get to go over the 101 things. So the things that every caregiver should just know are really important, even though you think that they already know it, and they might. They probably do already know it. It does two things. It makes sure that they know it, and it reinforces that they've been doing things the right way this whole time. Or you've given them a better way to do it, and they're like, oh, that is really helpful. When I taught, that's just what happened time and time again when I taught my live training classes in front of people pre-COVID, how to be a good caregiver. I would get nannies that had been a nanny for 9 years, and they still found it incredibly valuable because I was reinforcing all the things that they knew, and I was giving them other ways to do it. So they've been doing it this one way, but it actually was less efficient. It was less helpful than the way that we gave them as ways to do it. And I also say intensive workshops, because you could do things like, how do you write a really good resume so you're not spending time on that, and you're making your caregivers a stronger applicant. And then you could also, you could, however you create a course, I say A+ courses are not because of the format. So it's because of the content that you provide. So however you decide that you can give some content to your caregivers to support them and to educate them and to give them some guidance when they otherwise usually fall backwards into learning things is great. Make a video on iMovie, use YouTube to host it. It doesn't matter if the whole world sees it or not. You can just copy that link every time and send it to that caregiver you want to see it. Or you could create like a welcome video to your agency and you just put that in that email that says, hey, thank you so much for applying. Then they click on this link and it's like, hey, if you're wanting to apply to our agency, blah, 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 use something other than blah, blah, blah. But you can talk about why that this is a great agency to apply with. And my pro tip on that is what we do in Nanny ABCs is everything has actionable steps in it. So you don't just say things theoretically to do and they go, oh, that's really helpful. I tell them exactly things that they can do once the course is over, or as they're doing the course, things that they can actually be doing. It's usually, hey, think of like 5 things that you can improve on this specifically, or what are your core values? A lot of people don't think of things like core values, but once you write them down, it becomes really powerful for you. So you can do things like that. And then, or Sam versus Pam. This is basically that Sam can't find qualified applicants, can't qualify their caregivers. They're drowning in emails. They lose track of the things that they need to get done day to day. They have a bad work-life balance. Everything is always about work, and they can only operate in the now of everything. There's no time to think about the future of their agency, which is like what everybody spends time doing before things get rough and you're like in the thick of it. And now you're in the thick of it and you don't have time to think of those other ways that you can grow and do better things. And at the same time, we have Pam, and Pam is feeling great. She has a smile. Her hair looks done professionally. It probably was, because Pam has time for that stuff now. She's able to qualify her caregivers. She uses an automated process for all the things that don't add value to her day. She completes tasks that need to get done easier because she has more time for that now. She has a great work-life balance. As you can see with the smile on her face, she has plans for later today. And she has more time to work on the future and the goals of her agency because she has taken out the mundane stuff. So just mention action steps. Here would be your action steps. You should, once we're done with this, or you could start doing it in your head right now, you should review your system. So what are the places that you can reduce the friction, lower the bar to getting in to your agency or to progress a caregiver or a family, things like that. Anything that reduces the friction there. One of the things is like remove clicks. It's really important how many clicks it takes to get to that application process. So if you can make it from 5 clicks to 3 clicks, that's a huge barrier. That seems like a nothing thing, but it actually is super important. Then you should review your workflow. So what are 5 things that you can do that you do every week that you could actually automate or delegate? So think of those things. And then you should reach out. You should reach out to the fine people at Enginehire for more information on this stuff. You can absolutely reach out to me. I love talking to everybody. You could email me directly at Danny@nannyabcs.com. And I'm super open to talking to you about everything. It's just because I love overwhelming support. And so with that, really thank you for giving me the time that you did today already. We'd love to answer any of the questions we have. We have all the experts here, as you already saw. And there's that QR code that's on this slide. And that QR code will bring you to a survey that could tell us what we could do more. What information do you want to know? So we can keep giving you things to help improve your agency. So, and to that, I hand it back to Daniel.